All right, we are live, and let me tell you, I could not be more excited for this show because it might be happening. This is the first glimmer of hope that you and I, what we've been demanding, we have been demanding justice, that we might be getting justice. And listen, I'm cynical when it comes to government. I like to define myself as a cynical optimist because I'm optimistic about the role you and I play. I think our voices make a huge difference, and I'm cynical about what the politicians are going to do about it. But this is huge. According to a Fox News report, the Department of Justice in the Trump administration has impaneled a grand jury. This comes in response to the criminal referral from Tulsi Gabbard over the declassified Russiagate report. I mean, this is a great sign because the purpose of impaneling a grand jury is, of course, to bring charges against those who committed crimes during Russiagate. This is what Fox News reported. Attorney General Pam Bondi directed her staff on Monday to act on the criminal referral from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard related to the alleged conspiracy to tie President Donald Trump to Russia. And the Department of Justice is now opening a grand jury investigation into the matter. Bondi personally ordered an unnamed federal prosecutor to initiate legal proceedings, and the prosecutor is expected to present department evidence to a grand jury, which would allow the department to secure a potential indictment. This, according to a letter from Bondi reviewed by Fox News Digital and a source familiar with the investigation. Guys, we might actually get charges that aren't just perjury charges in Russiagate. But remember, we have a very special guest joining the show here just momentarily. But remember what Hans Monkey told us last week, that the charges in Russiagate are, of course, very important. But the location of where the charges are brought is arguably even more important, because if the charges are brought in DC or in New York, it's so incredibly biased in those jurisdictions that it doesn't matter how airtight the case is, you're not going to have a conviction. So I want to bring on John Solomon. He's an investigative reporter. He's been following this story for a decade now. He, of course, is the founder of Just the News, an incredible website. I check their website every day. John, good to see you.
Yeah, good to be with you, Liz.
All right, John, yesterday you reported that this grand jury impaneled by the Department of Justice was impaneled in Florida. Do you have any updates for us today? Have you heard anything new since then?
Yeah, listen, I think you may see multiple grand juries be impaneled to make it easy to gather evidence. I think the three places to look are New York and Washington, just for assisting grand juries, but not for bringing indictments. That is common that prosecutors use multiple grand juries because of where people live, save the travel costs. I think the big banana grand jury, the one that will decide on indictments, will probably be put in Fort Pierce, Florida, which is the same area where President Trump's Mar-a-Lago classified documents case was brought and ultimately dismissed. The reason for that is that's where the most recent acts of an ongoing conspiracy may have been committed, which is that's where the raid on Mar-a-Lago was authorized from, where Jack Smith did his work, where it was determined that Jack Smith wasn't lawfully impaneled as a special prosecutor. That's an important act. And where there are now concerns, according to the Office of Special Counsel, the whistleblower office, that Jack Smith may have engaged in election politics while operating as a prosecutor. So the reason that's important is if you do the most current events and you impanel the grand jury in Florida for charging purposes, all the things that can go all the way back to 2016 can flow through that one grand jury as the charging instrument. And the way we're going to see this evolve is that we've already had grand juries, right? We had John Durham do grand juries. He brought indictments. People got acquitted. They're not looking at this as Mickey Mouse little cases. They're not looking at this guy lied, this guy filed a false report. They're looking at what started with Hillary Clinton's clearing on the email case and the starting of Russia collusion through Ukraine impeachment, where they hide Hunter Biden's problems but try to pretend Donald Trump has a Ukraine problem, all the way through Jack Smith, is one ongoing criminal conspiracy. And in that, the overriding charge of the conspiracy will be a deprivation of civil liberties under color of government authority, meaning the United States government used its powers in the intelligence community and the FBI and the Justice Department to meddle in elections. And by doing so, they deprived people like Carter Page and George Papadopoulos and President Trump and Mike Flynn of their civil liberties. They may have deprived all Americans of their civil rights to a fair and free election. And as a result, that is the overarching charge of the conspiracy. Then there are many overt acts and subcrimes that could be charged against that, false statements. But when you take it in that context, you now have the Democrats on trial for something they claim they stand for, civil liberties and civil rights. They're now going to be accused of violating those laws.
And that's one of the big charges. We've been talking frequently on this show about how we don't want measly little perjury charges to be
Yeah,
brought
that's right.
as the main thing. We
Yeah.
want some of the big crimes, whether it's grand conspiracy, seditious conspiracy, conspiracy to defraud the government, deprivation of civil liberties under the color of law. We want these big charges to be brought.
Yeah.
This seems to be the first indication that the Department of Justice is serious about pursuing these charges. Let me ask you about the multiple grand juries. So there was a report yesterday in the Wall Street Journal that said that the grand jury impaneled by the Department of Justice was going to be in DC. Do your sources tell you that that's a different grand jury, or can you explain that contradiction?
I think that the initial gathering of this information will occur in DC in New York, where there are two separate things going on. The reason for that is that the early stuff they're looking at is what Tulsi Gabbard referred. All the acts in that referral occurred in Washington, D.C., but that information could easily be transferred to Florida when it comes time for charging the larger conspiracy case. So it is not uncommon to have multiple grand juries look at something. Where you ultimately decide to bring the charges is where you think the primary, most current, and most serious crimes occurred, and then you can charge backwards through other locations. And so my understanding is New York and DC has some grand jury activity that's starting, but the plan is for the U.S. attorney in Miami perhaps would build a team in Fort Pierce where the Jack Smith case was, and all of the evidence eventually will get transferred to one jurisdiction. But that, a lot has to be worked out. The U.S. attorney in Miami just got confirmed on Sunday. So these guys are just getting up. Judge Janine just got confirmed in D.C. But I think the Justice Department's acutely aware that if you're going to bring charges in D.C. and with a 92% Democrat jury poll, the chances of conviction, even on good evidence, is low.
Yeah.
And also, most of the things that Tulsi Gabbard sent forward are outside the statute of limitations, 2016, 17, 18. So you can't charge them unless you attach them to a larger conspiracy case.
Right. And my understanding is that conspiracy, which is not evades, but statute of limitations doesn't apply to conspiracy because you can start the statute of limitations from when the last act of the continuation of that conspiracy happened, which obviously has been within the last 5 years.
Sure.
Okay, talk to me a little bit about the Mar-a-Lago raid, because you were saying something interesting that I was following yesterday about why that raid happened, why the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, that they weren't just doing it to humiliate Trump. They weren't just doing it to put him in danger or to humiliate his wife by raiding her underwear drawer or whatever they did, that they were looking for Russiagate documents, but not generalized Russiagate documents, a specific Russiagate document. What document is that they were looking for, and why is it so important?
So Devin Nunes, House Intelligence Committee chairman formerly, and now the President's Intelligence Advisory Board, says he believes they went to Mar-a-Lago among many documents looking for some of the Russia collusion documents. Now, I can tell you as a reporter who asked for permission for the president to go to the archives to get the declassified information that Trump declassified in 2021, but was never released public, despite the fact that he ordered it released, that I got overtures from the Justice Department and the National Archives about why he was doing that. And did President Trump ever show me documents at Mar-a-Lago? And the answer is no. If he showed them, I wouldn't have been going to the archives to look for them. But there was a moment of time when some in the deep state government thought that maybe Trump had him there. So I have reason just from my own personal interactions to believe that. Devin Nunes has reasons because he is head of the President's Intelligence Advisory Board. He has unique insights to what they were looking at. I think it's an important question to answer. Were they looking for it or not? It doesn't actually affect the ability to bring the case in Florida, but it might augment the case being in Florida, because if you can tie a specific effort to find a Russia collusion document to something that it goes back to the original Russia collusion scam with Hillary Clinton, it just helps the jurors understand, hey, this really is one continuous operation. Now, you don't need that, because you can say, hey, Jack Smith did this because Joe Biden had a problem with his classified documents. Ukraine impeachment because Joe Biden had a problem with Hunter Biden's Ukraine grifting. And Hillary Clinton did their thing, and they did the Trump-Russia collusion thing because Hillary Clinton was trying to get over her email scandal and her past dealings with Russia, where her husband got a $500,000 payment. So you could make the conspiracy case without that. But I think an important early question, which Devin Nunes raised on the record on my show, is, were they looking for that there? That would be an important piece of insight to have, and it's something we don't have in the public record. So that's why I've mentioned it.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Specifically, it's the FBI interview with Stephen Halper, correct?
Well, that could be one. Now, in fairness, I made that public already in
Yeah.
2021. I was able to get that, but that could be one of those documents. But that wasn't the only document they were looking for. They might have been looking for the classified annex. Uh,
Yeah.
all we know is that Devin Nunes believes there's a high degree of possibility they were looking for something
Mm.
like that. By the way, that document wouldn't have been classified. Stefan Halper was debriefing documents, which I've made public, were declassified. So it would be impossible for the president to be charged with classified information holding because he actually had it. But if he had the classified appendix to the DOJ IG report or the HIPSI report, which came out in the last couple of weeks, the intelligence reviews of the intelligence committee assessment, those would be still highly classified. And if President Trump had them in their possession, by the way, they'd be smoking guns. But that would give them cause to want to retrieve them. So we'll just have to see. But right now, it's a question, not a certainty that it happened, but it's worth checking into if someone
Yeah.
as smart as Devin Nunes has raised it.
Yeah. Do you have any idea who the prosecutor? I know the original report from Fox said an unnamed prosecutor had
Yeah.
been assigned by Pam Bondi. Do you know who that is?
There's some career people in the National Security Division that are looking at it first. That's not uncommon. That's the normal way, not the way that sometimes the Biden and Obama Justice Departments did things. But normally you start with the career people. You'd create a strike force. The strike force would get the best agents. And then at some point, when you get to a charging decision, you're either going to put the confirmed U.S. attorney in charge of the case, because that's what the law requires, or you'll name someone who is confirmed to be a special prosecutor. Because if you're going to make the argument that this conspiracy violated the civil liberties of Donald Trump, you might have a conflict of interest. So you create that independence of a special prosecutor. But remember what happened in the Jack Smith case. That person has to be a Senate confirmed appointee. It doesn't have to be a Senate confirmed U.S. attorney, but it does have to be someone who's currently confirmed by the Senate in some form. That's the ruling that negated Jack Smith. So I don't think the Trump Justice Department is going to make that mistake like Merrick Garland did.
No, the reason I'm asking is because I think a lot of us are curious about who this individual is,
Yeah.
because there still are a lot of deep state individuals
sure.
who are in
Yeah.
the federal government, in the FBI. And we want to make sure that this is not a John Durham, that this is not a Jack Smith, that this is someone who we have
Sure.
a full idea of their background and their ideology and any potential bias that they have.
Listen, I think the most likely thing is the career prosecutor will almost certainly be working with Janine Pirro as a U.S. attorney in Washington, now confirmed. And then if this case does move to Florida, which is, I think, is some of the discussion right now, not yet acted on, but likely to occur, then I think the U.S. attorney just confirmed for Miami on Sunday would then jump into action. My understanding is he's coming to Washington, D.C. next week to meet with the attorney general and the senior leadership of the DOJ. That's not uncommon. You start your new job at a big place, you come. But I do think this topic will probably come up in that.
That's a heck of a way to start a new job. Is he someone that, Trump's base can have confidence in?
Yeah, very, very good lawyer, very good prosecutor. I think you listen, the early appointees that the president has named, these are people who have bona fides. I mean, look at Judge Janine. She was a judge and a very successful prosecutor, and that's what gave her TV career. But she was a fantastic and well-respected jurist and prosecutor in Westchester County, which is one of the big ballparks in prosecuting, obviously outside of Manhattan. So you want people with that for this type of case. You want the people with those sort of bona fides to be making the right decisions. You don't want to bring a frivolous case. You want to bring a solid case, one that will stay in the courts and be sustained, so that you have a deterrent going forward.
How long do you expect this grand jury process to take?
It's hard to say, right? Depends how many people lawyer up, take the fifth, mount executive privilege claims, with Barack Obama could potentially do. So we don't know yet, right? If it was a smooth sail, a case like this with the predicate already written by the FBI. Remember, Kash Patel and his FBI opened up this case in April. So there's a body of evidence written by career FBI officials ready to go. It could take 6 months, 7 months to get charging if there aren't obstructions in the way. I mean, it's a very complicated case.
Yeah.
But if
who's most likely to face charges in your opinion? Like who does the Department of Justice have the best case against?
I'm going to do something the Obama-Biden Justice Department didn't do, which is presume everybody's innocent until otherwise proven. But we know who's been referred, right? We know that John Brennan's been referred. We know that James Clapper's been referred, that James Comey is. And when you look at the potential government deprivation of civil liberties, if that's the overarching concern, I do think you take a look at the FBI and CIA as being really predominant actors in that. So I would not be surprised that Comey and Brennan are at the top of the list for early grand jury appearances. And I don't believe that President Obama can be charged based under the immunity ruling. That's based
You
on
don't.
interviews. Well, just based on the legal experts. I'm not a lawyer,
Okay.
but I've talked to a lot of lawyers, and they don't think so. But that creates a really unique circumstance for Barack Obama. He could still be subpoenaed. Just because he has immunity doesn't mean he can't be subpoenaed. He's going to be required to tell the truth. If he lies, he could be charged as a private citizen with lying about something for which he had immunity for. And he also can't claim the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. He can't climb up because he's got immunity. So he's got to go in and tell the truth if he's subpoenaed. And I don't think the truth is going to be a very interesting story that he'll want to tell for his legacy. And the former presidents worry about how history will look at them. This is a moment where Obama's legacy could be significantly altered by what the grand jury does. So it's an uncomfortable position for Barack Obama, whether he's indicted or not. I think the only way he gets indicted is if he lies in the grand jury.
Interesting. I mean, you could argue that it'll be more interesting to watch this unfold because Barack Obama has immunity that compels him to testify.
Sure.
I know you have to go. I really appreciate your reporting and being on the show. We'd love to have you
Anytime.
back anytime. Thanks for being
Love
here, John.
everything you do, Liz. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Isn't John great? I mean, this guy has been reporting on Russiagate since the get-go. We've tried to have, by the way, you guys have probably noticed this pattern. We tried to have on what I would call the OG reporters for Russiagate on over the past week. People who have been relentless and dogged and really courageous. I don't want to sound too cheesy here, but these people have put their careers on the line, their reputations on the line. They did not get a Pulitzer Prize for their reporting on Russiagate. And yet they've been correct on their reporting for the last 9 years. So we tried to have these individuals on over the course of the past week, and John Solomon is one of them. This is pretty big. This is pretty big what he says. So let's walk through this. First of all, if a grand jury is going to be impaneled in Florida, and yet that's not going to happen immediately, that would explain what appeared initially to be a contradiction between what John had reported yesterday, that the grand jury would be in Florida, versus what the Wall Street Journal also reported yesterday, that the grand jury was impaneled in DC. John says, well, there's going to be a grand jury or some kind of grand jury activity in DC and in New York. And then the culmination of that, at least that's the plan right now, would be to impanel that grand jury in Fort Pierce, Florida, which is the same jurisdiction as Mar-a-Lago. Of course, hearkening back to that FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, which may have been related to Russiagate documents. If I was a betting woman, I would say, obviously, that FBI raid was related to Russiagate documents. It wasn't purely to humiliate President Trump. It was an FBI raid because the deep state was frightened. The deep state knew what President Trump had done right as he left office. He had declassified Russiagate documents. He had put Rick Grinnell and Kash Patel as DNI and deputy DNI in the months or weeks leading up to the end of his term. And they had gone in and found the dirt that Gina Haspel at the CIA kept hidden until Tulsi Gabbard released it. It's so messy. It's so complex. It's so convoluted. But as you can tell, can you tell that I feel hopeful? A cynic. Your friendly neighborhood cynic feels hopeful about a proceeding that relates to our government. Who would have thought it? I mean, it has to happen once in a while, right? As I said, my optimistic view of government lies in your role and my role. I would not sit here with you day in and day out, exposing corruption and demanding action from our government officials if I didn't think it was effective. That would just be like shouting against a wall. That would serve no purpose. My optimism lies in the fact that you and I, regular everyday Americans, when we demand justice, it actually happens. We are an effective force in reclaiming our country the way that it was intended to be. Free and equal and just. And that encourages me so much that it, even for the moment, and this will probably go back to its properly ordered cynicism tomorrow, it even for a moment supersedes the cynicism that I feel about our government officials, who I have no confidence in. Zero, none. I don't think that they do their jobs whatsoever. Okay, so the reason that I feel excited about this is not just because of the grand jury, and it's not just because it was reported that the grand jury was impaneled in Florida, but it's because of the charges that John Solomon says are being prepared, or that These are the charges that the grand jury has in their mind. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to mention our sponsor for today's episode, who I know you're going to love, XXXY Athletics. What is XXXY Athletics? Well, as I said, you're going to love this as much as I do. There's only one athletic brand standing up for American values, for free speech, and for biological reality, and that brand is XXXY Athletics. Get it? Chromosomes, men, women. Men do not belong in women's sports. 79% of Americans agree with this, but most are too afraid to stand up and say it. The tides are changing, but there are a lot of people who agree with us that maybe you wouldn't guess agree with us. Now there is a brand who is unafraid to speak this truth, so it makes it easier for us to do so. You just have to wear it. XXXY Athletics is the only brand defending free speech and the protection of women's sports. The clothes are so high quality, and when you wear them, you make a statement that you stand with women, with girls, with women's sports, with reality. XXXY Athletics has amazing logo tees and premium workout clothes, including leggings, moisture-wicking tops and tanks, tennis dresses, skirts, shorts, and more. And you no longer have to sacrifice fit, quality, and style to wear your values. And why in the world would you give your money to big brands that sell women out when you could wear XXXY Athletics? Head to, and I love their website. You ready for this? thetruthfits.com. thetruthfits.com. And of course, I have a promo code for you. Blaze20 gets you 20% off. That's Blaze20 for 20% off at thetruthfits.com. I know you guys are going to love it. Go check it out. Okay, so John Solomon tells us that this grand jury that has been reportedly impaneled is investigating charges against the Russiagate crime crew, is what I've been calling them. And those charges are not the piddly little perjury charges that we have been so afraid would be the only ones brought against Brennan and Comey and Clapper and even Obama and Gina Haspel and Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and all the rest. John Solomon tells us that this grand jury is looking into government deprivation of civil liberties, or the deprivation of civil rights under the color of law. This is a big one. This is not a slap on the wrist, go spend 14 days in prison only to get out and secure a cable news deal or write a book that makes the 2 weeks in prison almost worth the time. This is a real charge. This is a significant charge. This is a charge that you could feel confident, if there was a conviction on this charge, that this is justice. And we might be seeing this happen before our very eyes. I hope, I pray, raise your voice. Listen, I saw a video, and I'm going to show you this video in just a second. I saw a video of Stephen Miller talking to Maria Bartiromo. This was maybe 2 days ago. You know what? It was probably on Sunday. It was probably on the weekend show, so I did see it 2 days ago. And he was talking about which charges should be brought against the Russiagate crime crew. And when I watched this, I thought, he's the only person at that level of government who I have heard make the case for significant charges against the Russiagate conspirators. And this is what he said. Take a listen.
The Russia collusion hoax against President Trump remains the single greatest hoax and the greatest assault on our democracy in the history of this country. There's no comparison. There's no parallel to anything else. It was a coup. And I'm using that term literally. It was a coup to overthrow a democratically elected government, a coup carried out by the intelligence apparatus of this country, by the deep state, by Hillary Clinton and the Democrat Party. The new information that has been revealed by the Director of National Intelligence and by the FBI eliminates any scintilla of doubt about the intention, the premeditation, the planning and orchestration of this conspiracy. It meets all of the criminal elements of a seditious conspiracy against the United States. It meets the criminal elements of an insurrection. It meets the criminal elements of a conspiracy against the government and the criminal elements of a conspiracy to deprive citizens of their civil rights under color of law. One egregious felony after another. And because it is a conspiracy, as demonstrated by the forethought of realizing and documenting that they understood that this was fake from the beginning, meeting the mens rea standard in law. Because of that, because it is a conspiracy, every single individual actor is now part of that conspiracy. So that includes Brennan and Clapper and Comey and Hillary and Schiff and everybody else who knowingly and willfully perpetrated this plot, this coup, this conspiracy, this scheme against President Trump and the government of the United States. And now is the time and the hour and the moment for accountability so that we can reclaim this democracy, Maria.
The reason Stephen Miller went on Maria Bartiromo's show on Sunday was because Stephen Miller has a unique ability to synthesize the words and the feelings that we have expressed to the Trump administration. And what have we been expressing for the past 2 weeks? We have been expressing that we don't want a slap on the wrist. A slap on the wrist is not justice. A slap on the wrist is what I would describe as a token. Throw the peasants a few breadcrumbs, see if it'll quiet them. No. We want justice. Now, the penalty, by the way, for those of you asking, I see a couple of you asking in the live chat right now. It's a good question. What is the penalty if someone is convicted for deprivation of rights under the color of the law? This would be 18 USC 242. The answer to that is a very hard, well, it depends. If it is a quote unquote simple violation, it can lead to a fine, which seems like a slap on the wrist, or imprisonment for 1 year. Perhaps both, a fine and imprisonment for 1 year. That's not exactly putting away Brennan for the rest of his life like some of us would hope. However, if the violation, the conviction for deprivation of rights under the color of law results in bodily injury, then that penalty can increase to imprisonment for up to 10 years. I would argue that this is not a simple violation of deprivation of rights under the color of law. This is a complex and severe deprivation of rights inflicted by the government, no less, by the government. That's the complicating factor here, that these were men in a position of incredible power over you and over me. 10 years in prison. Now, if the violation is of the most severe, resulting in death or, aggravated circumstances like kidnapping or aggravated sexual abuse, which these aren't, then the penalty for imprisonment can be any term, even for life, even the death penalty. But that I don't believe applies in this particular case. But the reason Stephen Miller is talking about these charges is the same reason that we have been making it very clear that we will not accept from Pam Bondi piddly little charges. We don't want perjury. We don't want measly little slap on the wrist. We want justice. And Stephen Miller is going on Maria Bartiromo because we know Pam Bondi likes Fox News. She's watching it. She knows that this is a direction from the White House. This is not just Stephen Miller as an individual giving his opinion. This is essentially how the White House is going to communicate what they want these individuals to be charged with. That, of course, is one media outlet covering the truth, allowing reality to be spoken. But when I say you do not hate the mainstream media enough, listen, there's a problem among those of us, and I'm culpable of this too, so I'm not just pointing my finger at other people. There's a problem among those of us who are really deeply invested into the new media movement, that we have rejected mainstream media, rejected cable news. We're, in the podcast world, we're independent, we're new media figures, and we love it, and it's influential, and it's wonderful. But we do have one blind spot. And that blind spot is we feel like we have defeated the mainstream media because in some senses we have broken their monopoly. It used to be, even as short as 10 years ago, that someone like me would not be able to have a platform, would not be able to make a living, would not be able to levy any influence, make my voice heard with you, unless a cable news outlet or a network television station gave me a show. And so there were very limited spots where people could actually do what I'm doing, working in this industry. And those spots were really strongly protected, is what I will say. They didn't just hand those spots out to anybody. It was gate kept like you can't even explain. There is no way that 10 years ago, someone like me would have been allowed on the media, because the media, the CNN and the MSNBC and the NBC and the ABC, they wanted to control the narrative, and they did. They had a monopoly because they controlled all the spots, and that's what everybody watched because that was the only option. And so fast forward to today. People like me feel like that we've broken the mainstream media. We feel victorious. I feel incredibly proud, actually, of what we have done to break the mainstream media monopoly. They don't have a monopoly anymore. They simply don't. They don't control the narrative without any dissent. They don't compel all the eyeballs to look at them because they're the only option. We have, you and I, successfully broken the mainstream media. But, and I say this with all humility, our blind spot is that because we believe accurately and are proud of, righteously, of breaking the mainstream media monopoly, we also sometimes forget that the mainstream media still exists and that they don't just exist in token. We often mock them for their low viewership. You know, The View, who watches that, Jake Tapper? Look at CNN's ratings. It's fun and it's funny and there's an element of truth to that. But we forget that the mainstream media, unfortunately, is still incredibly influential. They do drive narratives. They do influence people's minds. They do serve, and when I say for better or for worse, I mean for worse. They form the way that a large demographic of the American people view current events. And they are, to this day, as dishonest and despicable as they have ever been. You'll recall back in 2018, the New York Times, along with the Washington Post, won a Pulitzer Prize. For what? For their fake propaganda, their reporting on Trump-Russia collusion, which didn't exist. They lied. They packaged those lies as the truth, and the Pulitzer Prize was given to them. This is actual footage, just to remind you, so that you tangibly feel how utterly despicable these people are. This is footage from the New York Times newsroom when it was announced that they won the Pulitzer Prize for their Russiagate reporting. Take a look.
Remarkable tribute to a newsroom at the peak of its energy and creativity. You all have won 3 Pulitzer Prizes this year.
On January 19th of last year, we wrote a story about an ongoing federal investigation into the campaign of the person who about 18 hours later was about to take the oath of office to become president. We didn't know then, and we don't know now, where this story will end. But it's been an honor to cover it with the people standing here. To our colleagues in the Bureau, a year and a half ago, you saw the storm coming.
The smugness on the faces of these propagandists, this is quite literally the same as if the Chinese Communist Party gave an award to their state-controlled media apparatus. The New York Times played a pivotal role. The Washington Post played a pivotal role in propagating the Obama, Brennan, Comey, Clapper, Susan Rice, Andrew McCabe, Gina Haspel, Russiagate conspiracy to the American people. First of all, the American people wouldn't have even known about the invented intelligence community assessment that Obama convened that secret meeting in the Situation Room on December 9th to discard the actual ICA because he didn't like that it said, well, there's no evidence actually that Trump colluded in any way with Russia or that Putin favored Trump. We just don't have that evidence. Because Obama didn't like that reality, he convened his crime crew for a secret meeting in the White House. They manufactured a new ICA. And how did you hear about that? How did we even know that that meeting happened? How did we even know about the contents of a highly classified intelligence community assessment? Oh, that's right. Because the propaganda arm, the mouthpieces of these deep state swamp creature tyrants, It's the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and MSNBC and all the rest of them. If not for these mainstream media outlets acting as propagandists, shameless propagandists that are patting themselves on the back. Oh, we won. We worked so hard for you. We won. Pat ourselves on the back a little bit more. This would never have been successful. Obama and Brennan and Comey and Clapper would never have been able to pull this off without the mainstream media. So contrast that with what's happening this week. Back then, they obsessed about something that didn't exist, and they had remarkably zero journalistic curiosity to actually track down the truth. They reported a fake news story for years and years and years. You have to wonder, will their Pulitzer Prizes be rescinded? Will we get a video of their newsroom when it's announced that those Pulitzers are being withdrawn because they're just a bunch of liars? Will any of these outlets issue retractions or corrections or statements admitting that they got it completely wrong? Will anyone be fired over this? No. Of course not. Contrast that with now. In the year of our Lord 2025, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, says that the releases of a trove of information reveals a years-long coup and treasonous conspiracy. And she provides receipts after receipts after receipts. You want to see the proof? Be my guest. Here are the documents. You want to verify this? Be my guest. Here are more documents. And how does the mainstream media react? This is what they say. Take a look.
A couple of weeks ago, Hallie, when really the headlines were dominated by the Jeffrey Epstein controversy, and then the president was sort of trying to change the topic very obviously, and in many different venues, was trying to bring up these unsubstantiated claims about the role he argues former President Obama had in the 2016 election and trying to suppress some information that he says would have been damaging if it had come to light. And so then you had the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, come to the White House briefing room, come to the podium and try to share some of this alleged new evidence. Well, now you have the Attorney General saying that they're going to try to take that information, which, remember, they had announced a strike force to look into what they call this new evidence and try to evaluate it to see if there could be any potential criminal indictments that they would follow. And the thing that matters here is that this is basically a grand jury investigation that's being launched, but that will happen in secret. This is behind closed doors, and it's completely unclear whether it will yield anything new. It's unclear that we will ever learn anything new about it because it could be under seal, but it really does bear repeating. This is looking into something for which there is no evidence to back it up, and it's really, it seems, a politically motivated move to keep the focus on one of the president's clear political foes and talk about basically anything else.
There is no evidence to back it up. There's just no evidence. We're not talking about a Russiagate report that was put together by the House Intel Committee under Devin Nunes. We're not talking about any kind of evidence that John Brennan deliberately ignored exculpatory sources telling him, you know, we don't actually have evidence that Putin favored Trump. We're talking about evidence of a manufactured narrative from Obama and Brennan and Comey and Clapper. No evidence of that. Come on. We're not talking about evidence when we look at these emails of Hillary Clinton approving the Russiagate plot, the idea for it as an effort to distract from her own email scandal. There's no evidence here. The mainstream media won Pulitzer Prizes for propagating fake news, lying, making up something that did not exist. And now they ignore what actually does exist. They are gaslighting you. They want you to think you're crazy for seeing what's before your very eyes. They are worse than frauds. They are a subversive force. We can't just ignore them. We can't just declare new media has broken the mainstream media monopoly. Yeah, we have, but they still have impact. We have to hold them accountable, ridicule them when they're wrong, humiliate them when they lie, and debunk them when they gaslight you. Mike Thomas in the live chat says the mainstream media must be held accountable as well. Yes, Of course, they must be held accountable. Part of that actually is a market, the market force holding them accountable. You have to stop watching them. Otherwise, they are still able to make money. Farouk Ahmad says, John Solomon's awesome. His ability to dig up sources is remarkable. It's always breaking news with that guy. Talk about journalistic integrity. Oh, John is right up there with you, Liz. Well, thank you for the compliment, for the kind words. And I concur with your assessment of John. I have known John Solomon for a long time in this business, and he's one of the good ones. He is a hard worker, and he always chooses to do the right thing, even when that right thing costs him his job. That's actually why he has Just the News right now, because at his previous job, he was not allowed to report the truth unencumbered. And so he said, well, that's not what the job of a journalist is. I'm going to go elsewhere. Maxu Pro for fun says, a jury in DC have lost hope and faith in Bondi. Well, you got to go back and listen to the whole John Solomon interview, though, because he said the jury in DC and the grand jury in New York, or the grand jury in DC, I should say, and the grand jury in New York will not be the only grand juries, that they are merely a collection force, and that hopefully the actual charges will be brought in Florida. And if that's the case, that's best case scenario. That is exactly what we have hoped for, exactly what we have asked for. Bill Stigl says, I totally concur with this, by the way. This is like me in a nutshell. Call me when anyone pays consequences. I will not hold my breath. I'm out. Oh, your cynicism is heartwarming, Bill. Of course, we'll all believe it when we see it. And that's the appropriate reaction to all of the betrayal that we have suffered at the hands of our politicians. However, we cannot let the cynicism burrow so deeply in our souls that when something good does happen, or there's an indication that our voices are impacting the behavior, the actions, the choices, the policies of our government officials, that we cannot give credit where credit is due, and that we cannot hope that the justice that we're demanding, that we might be seeing the beginning of that justice. If we're not, believe me, I'll be the loudest voice to say so. But this is the most hopeful development that we have seen related to Russiagate since Tulsi Gabbard declassified or posted that tweet thread declassifying the House Intel report. So, yes, I'm not going to hold my breath either. But what if? What if? All right, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, is she threatening to leave the Republican Party? According to a headline on Mediaite, that's the case. Let me bring this headline up. It says, Marjorie Taylor Greene threatens to leave the GOP for betraying Trump's MAGA base. Well, that's not exactly the real story, is it, Mediaite? They say, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene threatened to walk away from Republicans after unleashing a scathing attack, claiming the party has abandoned President Donald Trump's MAGA base and lost touch with pushing America First policies. In a 45-minute exclusive phone interview with the Daily Mail, the Congresswoman suggested her once loyal relationship with the GOP is rapidly fraying. I don't know if the Republican Party is leaving me or if I'm kind of not relating to it as much anymore, Greene said. I think the Republican Party has turned its back on America First and the workers and just regular Americans. Pointing to Trump's cost-cutting DOJ initiatives, she raged that campaign promises were falling by the wayside. Like, what happened to all those issues? You know, that I don't know what the hell happened with the Republican Party. I really don't. She added, but I'll tell you one thing, of course, that it's on. I don't want to have anything to do with it, and I don't care anymore. Greene, one of Trump's most vocal allies, insisted her allegiance to Trump remains intact. Her ire is squarely aimed at GOP leadership, particularly Speaker Mike Johnson, and what she calls the good old boys network that she believes dominates state-level politics. Well, that's a totally different reality than what that headline suggested. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not threatening to leave the Republican Party in the sense that she's no longer going to be a Republican. She is calling out the reality that the entirety of the Republican Congress are impotent squishes. You know that. I know that. Marjorie Taylor Greene might be the first member of Congress to actually say it. We talk often about the Democrats stymieing President Trump's agenda, or deep state actors infiltrating the Trump administration, the executive branch, to subvert what we voted for Trump to do in the Oval Office. But it really doesn't get enough attention how terrible the Republicans are in Congress. The reason that the Republican Congress doesn't accomplish what we want them to is because the people who claim to represent us in Congress don't actually share our viewpoints. They don't share our values. They don't even share our political views. They pretend to in order to get our votes, and then they go there and they're the uniparty. They're just the same as Democrats. We don't see any based policies coming from Republicans in Congress because they're not based. They don't want to win. They don't share our view of what a flourishing, prosperous United States is, or what policies are required to ensure that we have a flourishing and prosperous United States. That's what Marjorie Taylor Greene is calling out. She's saying, I don't want to be part of a club that pretends to be Republican, but isn't. I don't want to be part of the uniparty. And that's essentially what the Republican Party has begun. Thank you to Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene for actually having the courage to say it. On the other side of the aisle, we have Democrat Congresswoman Delia Ramirez. She was speaking at a summit this past weekend in Mexico City. And speaking in Spanish, she told the audience that she's a proud Guatemalan before American. Take a listen to this.
Quiero terminar diciendo unas palabras en español porque yo soy guatemalteca con mucho orgullo, primero que soy americana.
I'm a proud Guatemalan before I'm an American, she said. A United States Congresswoman is a proud Guatemalan before she's an American. Now, I've seen responses on X calling for her citizenship to be revoked. She is, after all, a naturalized American citizen. She is not a natural-born American citizen. And I did a little research before we went on air to see what legally constitutes grounds for denaturalization. And the bar is pretty high. It happens about 100 times a year, but the bar is pretty high. It has to be treason, or it has to be fraud, provable fraud that happened before the naturalization process began, before she was given citizenship to our country. So does she qualify for having her citizenship stripped based on the fact that the sitting U.S. Congresswoman said, I'm a proud Guatemalan before I'm an American? Let me wait just a second to answer that question and offer you this thought. How is it possible that we do not have a law on the books that allows for denaturalization if a naturalized citizen pledges allegiance to a foreign country over America? This is exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about when she says Republicans are terrible. We have a Republican majority in Congress. For goodness sakes, pass a law that says, yeah, we're going to strip your citizenship if you are a naturalized American citizen and you say, I'm a Guatemalan first before I'm an American. This is a member of the U.S. Congress. They all know her. This is not a story that they haven't heard about. This is happening in their midst. And yet they haven't even considered passing such a law. This should be the most obvious, thing that they've ever addressed. Like, how is this even a question? Of course, she should be stripped of citizenship. Now, whether or not the law that exists on the book today regarding grounds for stripping a naturalized citizen of their citizenship, I would argue that it constitutes fraud. Did she pledge allegiance to America when she, and to the Constitution when she became an American citizen? Well, if she did she commit fraud? Because she clearly didn't mean that if she views herself as a Guatemalan first. And no, she wasn't talking about culturally Guatemalan. Did she pledge allegiance to America and to our Constitution or not? And did she mean that or not? I think the video of her saying that she's Guatemalan first before American gives the answer to that question. At the very, very least, the United States Congress has the authority to expel her. And they should. They expelled George Santos, did they not? If the United States Congress, controlled by Republicans, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, does not expel Democrat Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, then that's all the answer to all the uproar about Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments about the Republican Party that you need to know. All right, I'm still feeling hopeful. All the naysayer, I know I'm usually the cynic here. Everyone in the comments usually like, Liz, we're going to get what justice is going to be served. And I'm usually like, I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it. I feel like opposite of that today. I feel like this is a glimmer of hope that even a cynic like myself, sure, I will wait and see. Maybe it won't turn out. But this is the best case scenario. Of all the things that could have happened as a result of Tulsi Gabbard making a criminal referral to the DOJ, of all the things that could have happened, this is literally the best. If you had asked me, and we probably did talk about this on the show like 2 weeks ago, if you had asked me, what is the best case scenario? This would be it. Okay, great. So that's a step. That's a win. It's not the entirety of justice, but it's at least heading in the right direction. It's not the wrong move for once. So maybe we're actually going to see justice. Okay, speaking of justice, I want to take a moment and talk to you about the cover-up on Blaze TV. Have you guys seen that? If you have not seen it yet, let me fill you in. It's a hard-hitting docuseries exposing how the federal government and public health agencies lied to you during COVID. Did you know they lied to you? Oh my goodness. From the virus's origins to the lockdowns to the vaccine narrative and how big tech helped them cover it up. This obviously was not public health. This was information warfare. If you missed the first 4 episodes of this acclaimed series, then by all means, binge them right now. You will not be able to put it down. And you'll want to binge them all because episode 5 just dropped and it's explosive. It's called Muckraker, and it dives into the pandemic industrial complex, showing how Fauci and Birx and government bureaucrats worked with social media platforms to silence you telling the truth. This is not just about censorship. It's about mind control. You got to watch it. All 5 episodes now at FauciCoverup.com/Liz. You'll get $20 off if you go to FauciCoverup.com/Liz. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. All right, guys, make sure you're subscribed to this show. YouTube.com/Liz Wheeler, X.com/Liz_Wheeler. On Spotify, you can search The Liz Wheeler Show, hit that subscribe button, give me a 5-star review over there on Spotify. I saw some of you did that yesterday. I really appreciate that. Keep them coming. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sitting here during this live stream. Thanks for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.